Hi, everybody. Welcome wherever you are to the 2024 mini Acecon organized by Avon. I'm Yasmin Bemwa. I'm a model asexual activist, and I'm also a board member of the Asexual Visibility and Education Network.
Hi, I'm Michael Dore, or Mick, and I'm on the Avon Project team and board of directors.
In this live stream, we're going to be talking with a selection of ACE activists and volunteers from across the world about what they've been up to this year and looking ahead to 2025. We also hope to hear from you, so there's a chance to share all of your cool ideas for the ACE community going forward.
So just before we get on to the stream proper, I'd like to give a quick outline about today. If you've been to previous online conferences we've held, this is a very informal, lightweight event by comparison. We didn't host a major conference this year, and so we thought we'd wrap up 2024 with a smaller online event, or mini conference if you like. So there are 4 main sessions today. There are 2 live streams, including the one you're watching right now, and 2 sessions on Discord. So if you're watching this, you're in the right place for the live streams. That is the Avon Livestreams YouTube account. The Discord server, on the other hand, is given in the video description. I encourage you to join and introduce yourself if you haven't already. In a second, I will also try and put it on the link on the screen.
First, this live stream, which should end sometime around 3 to 3:30 p.m. UTC. Then at 3:30, which is around 10:30 Eastern time, we're going to head over to Discord for the first session. And that hot topic is going to be ACEs and media representation. Then an hour later at 4:30 UTC, there's going to be a Discord session on ACEs and autism and that intersectionality. And then finally at 6 p.m. UTC, which is around 1 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to be back here for a live stream on ACE research. The timetable and links needed are given in the description of the YouTube video you're watching now. And the sessions are meant to be interactive. So definitely get involved. You can leave comments on the YouTube and also be sure to get involved over on Discord as well. We're going to try and get to as many comments as we can and review those afterwards that we miss live. The Discord sessions will be highly participant driven. So first, please do join the Discord server if you haven't already with the link in the description. There's space there to introduce yourself. Please note that as the link to the Discord server is publicly available to you, you should be careful about sharing any identifiable information, as in principle that is discoverable by anyone else who also has the same publicly available link. That said, we also like to ask participants in Discord to respect everyone's privacy and not to share personal information beyond the server without permission.
Thank you. Okay, just a bit about the Discord. See if I can actually share my screen. I had this a minute ago just to outline what's going on. There we go. This is the Discord for the ACE Minicon. Sorry, just get my bearings here. That's the welcome page. So in particular, the 2 main areas you'll need today for the discussions are the ACEs and media representation space here, and the ACEs and autism intersection space here. So the way this works, and there's more information about this on the server once you're there, is that this works using the Discord stages feature. So if you go on, if you can chat in this discussion area, but in order to actually join in the main event when it comes up, you click on the one below it, which takes you to the stage, and then you get these. You get the stage and you can join by opening your hand. I'm going to turn this off because it's making music and it's distracting me. So you press join stage, and then if you want to speak, you can raise your hand, and the host for the session will add you at some point, as many people as we have time for. They can also invite you to speak, and then you can accept the invitation if you want and speak to everybody. And of course, aside from that, you can write whatever you want to, whatever you want to within reason, in the text area, which that's a way of discussing with everybody else present, though the hosts will be concentrating mostly on the actual staged area. Sorry if this is all confusing, but there's more information in the Discord, and we'll be around to help you out there. To leave a stage channel at the end, you just press the leave quietly button at the bottom. The server also has a space for social chatting, just slightly above here. No, sorry, it's below. It's here. You can use this at any time. And this is to talk to other people. It doesn't have to be about the topics in the conference, though it can be. And we'll be on here all day. Right, I will just try and take this one off. If I can find the right thing. Yeah. There we go.
After all the sessions, there's also going to be a hangout over on AirMeet where you can chat with other participants by joining virtual tables. The link for this is also in the YouTube description. You'll need to give a name when entering the room to register for the session, though you can feel free to use a screen name. Hopefully, are there any questions?
Let's have a look in the comments. Okay, not seeing any questions so far, but we'll try and keep an eye on the live comments as things progress. So let's move on. Without further ado, I'd like to start off the conversation. As I say, we're going to be talking to 8 activists about 2024 goings on and looking ahead to 2025. First, I should mention there's a big disclaimer here. Obviously, we're not going to be able to cover everyone and everything. There's a lot of really cool ACE activism and organizing work going on around the world and we can't possibly get to every single amazing thing that you're all doing. But that's kind of why we would like it to be interactive. So there'll be a chance to share. To share your own ideas and also to comment on things that you've been up to, and we will put up as many of those comments as we can, time permitting. We're also trying out something a bit different. We've made a little interactive area, where you can actually put up your own ideas. So let's see if I can share this again. I will go here and. Yeah, so this is something called Ideas Board, and there's a link to this in the YouTube description. I'll put it up on the page in a second on the screen. But in the meantime, you can see that we've got 2 columns here, one for ACE projects from the last year and then one for looking ahead to 2025 and beyond. If you go to the link in the description, you should be able to add things to this by pressing the plus. So if you have any thoughts inspired by the activists you're hearing from, then please feel free to add to this. I just like obviously ask you to please be sensible about this. We can't moderate this in live time, so please feel free to add your own ideas. Do not delete other people's ideas, and obviously please don't write anything offensive on these. If there's a problem, we'll try to get to it as soon as we can, but we trust you all to use this sensibly. So that's in the again in the description, and I'll try and get the feel free to add things to this as you go along, and we'll have a look towards the end to see what to see what's there. Okay, I'm going to take my screen off again now. And let's just add the link to that thing there, which is probably more helpful, the one in the YouTube description, because you can copy paste that. So let's move on. The first activist I'd like to talk to is none other than the very one and only Yasmin Benoit, whom we have right here. So, Yasmin, what have you been up to this year?
Well, I have some pictures to demonstrate just how busy 2024 is. Hopefully we can get those slides up on the screen, Nick.
Yeah, just give me a second. There we go.
So 2024 was incredibly busy from the beginning. I've been focusing a lot on the healthcare side of my campaigning. Now that we have a Labour government, it's been a lot easier to meet with politicians and get asexuality discussed in conversations around conversion therapy in the UK. I've also been doing some work within the NHS a lot more, speaking at the NHS LGBT conference and getting that out in front of healthcare professionals, and of course, visiting Parliament and MPs, as you can see in these pictures of Dawn Butler and in the Houses of Parliament on the right. And that's definitely something I'm planning to continue in 2025. I've also been doing more work around workplace equality within the research I did with Stonewall. Those were the two areas of focus, healthcare and asexual discrimination in the workplace. So it's been great to be able to visit such a wide range of different industries, from law firms to finance to advertising, from the kind of more commercial side that my modeling's involved in, and even dating apps like Bumble, making sure they know not to do any more faux pas like they've done with previous campaigns. So it's been really great to continue that work there and ensure that asexual people in workplace settings have equal inclusion within their policies. I've also been doing a lot of traveling this year. I would say that this has been like my most active year in terms of doing activism internationally. I've been working in Lithuania, Poland, Germany, Scotland, Wales, and Belgium, all usually on talks or shooting documentaries or kind of doing community work with young activists over there. So yeah, that's been really great to keep the ethos that we put into International Asexuality Day in terms of making sure that things aren't too Eurocentric, and also connecting with ace activists in different countries and learning about what the situation is like over there. And it's been great to see like the work going on in Poland and in Germany, for example. It's also been a pretty good year for my media work. I think that it's definitely, in this climate, it's harder to get platforms that want to kind of genuinely talk about asexuality. So I've been really grateful for the collaborations that I've got to do this year. Some stuff with the BBC on BBC Radio, work with Attitude magazine, and most recently my somewhat scandalous Playboy article and shoot that I did for them, which is a really fun way to kind of reach a very new audience. So I've definitely appreciated that. And also, of course, my community work has definitely been amping up for International Asexuality Day. We did the event over at the London LGBTQ Plus Center, joining one of their Ace and Aero meetups, which was really great. Also doing a lot of collaborations around that time, more work within the wider queer community as an ambassador for Queer Britain, for example, and also with charities like Diversity Role Models to end LGBTQ plus bullying in schools. I also drew upon a lot of their support for Ace Week. I think that was, I've probably done more collaborations for Ace Week than I've ever done in my life. I had a goal to do something on each day of Ace Week. So I was collaborating with the Human Rights Campaign over in the US, Queer Chameleon, who did that amazing illustration there, with Queer Britain, with Attitude magazine, and with Stonewall on different educational posts and even some Ace historical posts, which was really fun. And of course, I would say a definite highlight has been leading Pride in London this year. I think that's the first time they've ever had an asexual person lead Pride in London. Getting to have asexuals assemble on the biggest billboard in Piccadilly Circus and dotted around London on boards was really, really cool. And I think such a great way to spotlight us as part of the queer community, and especially during Pride, even though it was very scandalous. And definitely caused a bit of a stir. I think that overall it was like a really positive experience, and it was great to see the community being so amped up about it. So it's definitely been a busy year. And for 2025, I have my German documentary is coming out in the first week of January. So I'm very excited about that. You'll probably spot some familiar German aces popping up in there as well, as I made sure to kind of talk to them and get them involved. I also have a research paper coming out in January as well as part of one of my new research positions. So I'm excited about that. And also, I'm definitely looking to do more kind of in-person community work next year. I feel like we need more in-person ACE spaces. So I'm hoping to do that and also do some more international work, hopefully dropping back over to America in the summer. And also I've got some work scheduled in Scandinavia, which I haven't done much in Scandinavia before. So definitely looking forward to heading there in June. And we'll see where else I end up. So I'm sure there'll probably be other places. And if you have any questions, now is a good time to ask. Yeah, about what's been going on, or just any questions in general.
Yeah, well, we'll wait for some questions to come in, but just like to say, wow, that's a very, very comprehensive set of and really impressive set of activities there, and very international as well. And actually, since you mentioned International Asexuality Day, I'd just like to shout them out as well. Give the website here, because and please do go and follow their social media, because yeah, both Yasmin and I are involved with them, but also there's a whole community of people from around the world who are doing wonderful things in their own countries, and this organization really is out there to highlight sort of the work sort of work that's done in places which haven't had as much awareness yet, since historically the ACE community has been somewhat focused on the Western English-speaking world. So yeah, please do check that out. And yeah, yeah, wow, thank you for sharing all that amazing work. Oh, okay, we have a few questions now. Let's have a look at this one from Danny. Danny Z asks, what is your research paper about?
This one is something I'm doing with King's College London. We haven't really announced it yet, but I've just been given a visiting position there. And so we're going to be doing multiple papers over the next few years. And our first one is into acephobia and into how common kind of anti-asexual attitudes are. Doing what they call a double list experiment to see if we could draw it out of people. And I'm sure you probably wouldn't be surprised to find that, yeah, it's definitely in there. People definitely have those views, but it's not the kind of thing that's ever really documented in research into like how common it is. So we thought that would be an interesting place to start. So that's kind of what we're getting into in this paper. We're going to kind of do a peer-reviewed version sometime this year as well. So I'm excited to get my first academic credit. So yes, that should actually be coming out on the 20th of January. So pretty soon. We conducted it a few months ago. So it's been pretty fast moving.
Yeah, so that will be a nice addition to the body of ACE research. And remember, of course, for more ACE research, we have a live stream coming up later at 6 p.m. UTC, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And see another question here from Firestreak asks, how do you juggle activism with your day job and personal life? It sounds exhausting.
I mean, it is. I must say, I feel like I need to prioritize a social life a little bit in 2025. I like severely neglect my social life. I don't really have that much of a social life. Fortunately, all of my work is very freelance. Like what you kind of see me doing is literally my job, from the modeling to the speaking to the writing to the researching. So it overlaps enough that I'm not like, how do I juggle both? Because it's literally, I feel like I have like 6 jobs and 100 things to do, and they all kind of interconnect. So yeah, it's more the personal life stuff that I think suffers a bit in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, you just kind of have to get good at juggling 100 different projects at the same time, all of which have the same theme but are pretty different. One, like, sorting out a Playboy shoot and preparing for the launch of a research paper at the same time. Same awareness, very different approaches.
Yeah, it definitely does feel like a full-time job, which is fine. I know that for you, this is actually part of your job, and not the only part of all your writing and modeling and things, but it sort of links into it. Whereas for many of us, this is something we do on the side that's different from our main job. But even so, it sounds like, yeah, you've a very hectic schedule. Just having a look to see if we have any more questions. There's this maybe isn't such a question, it's a comment I'd like to put up. So Dante Rossio says, sending greetings over from Poland.
Ah.
Thank you so much for stopping by there, even though I wasn't there, unfortunately, when you were there. They love your work.
Oh, thank you. Well, maybe you'll see me in the US next year. It is actually very impressive to hear about all the stuff that like the Polish ACE groups have been doing over there. I think especially, when countries have kind of different climates and different attitudes towards things. So every time I travel somewhere, I always try and I literally go onto internationalasexualityday.org and I find which ACE group is in whichever country I'm going to. And I always drop them an email being like, hey, do you want to hang out? Do you want to meet? Every time I go somewhere. So it's a pretty good resource for that.
Awesome. Just give another couple of seconds just in case there's any more questions. We'll keep Yasmin, if you're around, stay on the line, and feel free to comment as long as you're available on the when we bring on other activists, and we can circle back to you if there's any further questions there. But yeah, once again, thank you for all the amazing work you're doing. Any final comments before we move on?
Just thank you all for your support during this very crazy 2024, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we can all do together in 2025. And I'm going to be back on screen in a little bit, speaking with one of the other ACE activists that's popping up, so I will be around for a bit longer.
Okay. If you want to hop off screen anytime, just I don't know if you have the control to do that, but let me know when I will take you off.
I think I do.
Okay, cool. Let's see if I can just get rid of the slides.
There you go. I did it.
Yes, you've taken the slides off. Do you want to stay on the screen yourself, or?
I guess we can make space for the next people, and I'll head in the back.
Okay, sure. In fact, yeah. Oh, sorry, we've got that back again. Why have we got that back again? Okay. It's just me for a second, but that won't last for long. Because yeah, the next activist. Well, I thought I'd go next. But I'm going to mostly delegate this. Going to talk about a project that I'm quite excited about out of all the things I'm involved with, and that's we are redesigning the front page of Avon. That's asexuality.org. This is something we've wanted to do for a long time, and the new version should be coming out next year. If you go to the page asexuality.org, there's a lot of useful information, but there's also a lot that needs updating. And so I said I'm going to delegate this because I have a wonderful team of volunteers who are working hard on drafting the new version of the resource coming out, which we expect to come out sometime during the next year. So I'm about to bring onto screen a couple of people who've been working hard on this. First of all, here's Nej, and hello. And second of all, I'm going to bring on Steph.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Oh, made this.
Oh, that's nice. Yes.
Yeah, I thought I'd show everyone. Thought you'd like it.
You put that on the front door, or does it go as a decoration?
Yeah. Did anyone make anything like that or bake anything in the audience during the holidays?
No, not very much. I keep
That's
meaning to make a wreath, but like a pride wreath with like, fake flowers.
Oh, that'd be
like
cool.
pride
An ace one,
colors
yeah. Or a pride one, yeah.
Put that on my door, but never get around to it. That's like the story of my life. Never get around to it.
So, would either of you like to kick off and tell us a bit about, first of all, why we're doing this project and what you've been up to?
We're doing this project. I jumped in when Mick was recruiting volunteers because I used to be on project team, and I was the resource and education director, and I did a lot of updates of the main site and the FAQs, and created some other pages as resources about 5-6 years ago. So nothing has really happened with it yet, in part because it is a very old style site. But I am super keen on just this whole update project, making it something that looks more modern, which is not my specialty, so I'm not going to be, doing the design part of it. But just having a wider range of resources based on things that I found people need to know. I have been one thing that 2024 was for me was 10 years since realizing I'm asexual, and next month is 10 years since joining Avon. So there's a lot of experiences that I've had that I want to share, a lot of research that I've done, and just writing things in a way that I think will reach out to the people who will visit Avon for whatever reason. If that's they're questioning their own asexuality, they are needing to know for some kind of formal purpose, or they might be like a family member, friend, or partner or something. So we need good resources that are the right mix of succinct and thorough with the amount of information they give, and also being just visually easy to navigate around, all of those things that the whole team is bringing in.
Yeah, and this is for either of you. Feel free to jump in. What in terms of sort of topics that really are being discussed today that were not so much discussed back when the first version of the site was written. Can you suggest anything there? What sort of new topics are we really talking about that really need representation on the site that were less so back in the day?
The ones that I have been working on so far with the help of the lovely team members, there is asexuality and disability, which hasn't really been discussed. I've been on panels for that in past virtual conferences. So I just, in terms of being part of those discussions, I know there's a lot of things that can be addressed there. Issues about discrimination, and then more specific pages about things like in the workplace or in healthcare. There's also things about gender as well, which, like the disability side, has kind of a complicated overlap where it's not always connected. It's not always people don't always want these things associated with each other, but sometimes they do feel related in a way, and there is disproportionate overlap in our community. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I think a big theme there is the sort of whole intersection angle. I mean, of course, it's certainly not the first time it's been discussed in the ACE community, but as far as the Avon pages go, they were written at a time when there was less discussion of this. So you mentioned ACEs and disability, the idea that these are two very separate things, and yet some ACEs are disabled, and we need resources for people who and really to take account of people who fit into both categories. Back in the day, there was this sort of unassailable asexual pressure to sort of try and sort of make out that asexual people were sort of normal in every other way apart from one thing, which loaded term normal, of course. Whereas we want to make it clear that that these are they're sort of different things, and yet we kind of want to talk about people who do have both because they have unique needs, and many other intersections like ACEs and ethnicity is obviously a very important one, which is not covered on the site in great detail at the moment, but we want the new version of that to be much more representative. Steph, would you like to jump in here, talk about your take on this? And I believe you have something to share, some slides to share.
Yes, if they come up? I don't know how to get that on
By
the
add them to the
stage. I
stage.
see it on the side
Yeah,
there. Ah,
yeah, there we
yes,
go.
thank you. Yeah, that's the first one. Yes, happy holidays and happy New Year for everyone. Yeah, greetings. Let's see. And then thank you to the volunteers who've been helping us work on this. Some of the examples of things that we have been working on so far are like about gathering historical links, showing the evolution of over 20 years of Avon's front page history, updating the frequently asked questions pages, helping find links for other volunteers projects, sections that they're working on. We could really use more help with some topics from you, the audience, if you know anything of like ACE parents who have children, parents of ACEs, sexual partners of ACE-spec partners, various ACE-spec peoples from around the world who are BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, biracial, multiracial, African, various Asian countries, because they're a large continent with varying cultures that can affect other people's experiences. Various religions, those who are Muslim, Hinduism, Judaism, Sikhism,
And how these all
ACE-friendly
relate
therapists.
to asexuality and the unique challenges that that people from these intersections might have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can I just add,
ACE-friendly therapists.
and yes, you mentioned that we're definitely looking for more help here, and I just want to shout out that it's not just about writing all the resources ourselves. We also need people to look over it. Like, it's really important that we have obviously that people from the relevant groups are involved at every stage of the writing, but also reviewing it afterwards to make sure that what we have is actually accurate and acceptable. So then, we're really looking for people to get involved at any level, whether it's writing things from scratch, doing research, or also just proofreading things to make sure that we're being accurate and fair.
Yeah, I've been
That's correct, yes.
the stuff that I've been putting up, I've been telling the group that I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall, and you can edit it as much as you want. There's been some really great feedback from people, especially Steph did some very thorough feedback already. And sometimes you just don't know where to start in getting something written. So I am just trying to put something out there that other people can help shape, because this is representing the community. So we all have to make sure we review it together.
Yes, very
I'm
important.
sorry, my dog is demanding a lot of things. So if you hear any dog related sounds, there is indeed one.
Yes, thank you for your comment. Yes, we're working on that too. Ableism, discrimination, like the workplace and healthcare and all that. Yes, very important. Yep, agree.
Yes.
How to volunteer? Yes, I have information on that. Join us. Contact Mick on Discord or Michael Avon if you're interested.
Yeah, that's right. And if you can, as Steph says, the conference Discord, you can contact and leave a note saying that you would like to be contacted. You can also write to the Avon project team. Let me just add a banner for that. Here, it's see if I can get that up. There we go. avon.pt@gmail.com. And yes, we'd love to hear from anybody who would like to help out with this process.
Thank you. Definition of asexuality, yes. We'll look into that too. Yeah, discuss that. All of that stuff. If you have any ideas, you can share them.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for that. Any either of you any more to say about the awesome work you're all doing on the Avon front page, or shall we move on?
I just wanted to add real quickly, one other thing that we're looking for help with a lot is captioning of videos from like previous ACE conferences and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. There are there's a bit of a backlog, and we want to make the site as accessible as possible, and so yeah, captioning is super important. Cool. Well, thank you both for sharing that. And
Thank you. You're welcome. Bye, everyone.
Okay.
Hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yep.
Okay.
Bye, everyone. Yeah.
So feel free both of you to stay in the background. We can, if you want to be added back, we can put a message in the private chat and we can add you back. But in the meantime, we will say goodbye to Steph and say goodbye to Neige, and we're going to want to say goodbye to the screen share as well. I always forget how to do this. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to add Yasmin back to the stage because we are now going to have a chat with our next wonderful activist, who's called Sarah.
Hi.
Actually, before we get on, sorry, I was going to say before we get on to Sarah. So sorry, I'll come to you in a second. There were a couple of questions for Yasmin that came after that came after you left the screen. So I just thought I'd put that up here. There was yeah, I'll put it up here. Yeah, so can you say anything more about your activism in workplaces?
Yeah. So yeah, lots of places they bring me in. I've obviously, when I was doing that work with Stonewall, we released a research paper. It was concerning asexual inclusion in the workplace. And part of that has been distributing it to as many different workplaces as possible, as many different companies as I can find that seem to have a vested interest in DEI or have active pride networks. And I kind of run into them anyway through my work. And then that was kind of just like the initial connection. And then usually they're like, okay, well, let's bring you in. Let's see what we can do. So usually I kind of do talks there or more like longer term things. I know I was doing some work with one company a few years ago, and since then I've gone back there, and they've since established an ACE and ARO council there, and they have done a lot into putting asexuality into their policy and continued that work onwards in my absence. So it's great to kind of see places doing things like that, but you just got to plant the initial seed. So that's what I try to do. You can't always know for sure how much they're actually going to, take it into account and keep that stuff going. But there are definitely some places that do that, or at the very least, it makes asexual people in those workplaces feel a bit more comfortable. So that's what I try to do in that area.
Thank you. And just one last thing very quickly. You mentioned your research paper. Where should we look for it once it's published?
I mean, I'm definitely going to be sharing a lot of links to it, so you'll definitely be able to find it through me, but it's most likely going to be published on King's College London website and platforms, as they're who I'm doing the research with. It might end up in some other places as well, and I'm sure when we do the peer-reviewed version, then that will probably end up in some kind of academic journal or something like that. But yes, I think the main home will probably be on King's College London's research website.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, thank you for that. And so sorry, Sarah, for interrupting.
That's all right. I'll just quickly share my screen. I hope you should be able to see this. So I've just shared my slides. If you're able to bring it up on the screen for me, please. Magic button. Amazing. Right. So hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Cosgrove. My pronouns are she, they. I am very excited to have been asked to do this. I'm going to talk a bit about my advocacy work that I've been doing, kind of a bit more in general, with a bit of a focus on the last year. But just to tell you a bit about myself, I am based in the UK, down in the southwest of England. I have been working as a science communicator for about I want to say 11, 12 years now, I think, and I have a background in biology. I have also worked in education context during that time, specifically also working in inclusive education over the last about 6.5 years, including LGBTQ plus inclusive education. And I also volunteer for my local LGBTQ plus youth group. So I have sort of interact with queer youth on a regular basis and have been working with young people, say, pretty much over my career. So this is kind of the settings I have been in, and just so for me, I realized I came to realization that I'm asexual about 4 years ago, and I kind of realized as I was more open about it and talking about it, there was just a lack of visibility and awareness of people in STEM who are asexual. There was like one person who I knew who was out at the time. Her name's Yasmin Scarlett, and that was it. We're looking at asexual people in STEM. And we ended up co-founding a Discord server called Aces in STEM, which I'm happy to share a way in which you can contact me if you would like to join that. We don't like to share the link publicly to avoid things like raids. But basically just created the space, and now we have over 500 members. It's still existing 4 years later. And I've just been doing kind of work ever since to try and raise the visibility of asexuality in STEM. And then a more recent, sort of the last year, kind of utilizing sort of my experience in education, trying to also raise that visibility there as well, because there is still a lack of awareness of asexuality in education, although I will say it has also gone a lot better. So the place I want to start is actually this. This is an article published in 2004. And I think David J is watching this and will know this article because he was in it. And he talked about it in a live stream, I want to say a couple of years ago. And I remember watching his live stream. And basically, this article, The New Scientist, was referencing this research by Anthony Boggart, which was looking at, I think, UK populations. And the thing that I remember David talking about is how this was significant in terms of raising the visibility of asexuality in the UK through science communication, through science media. And this is something I just found really interesting as a science communicator. And something I think about is how, like, what is the kind of the role of science communication, things like this, what could also be the pitfalls we need to be careful of, but also the importance of having ace voices. I think the thing I really loved about that article in particular is that included asexual activists in it, and that was the right thing to do, rather than just been centering on the scientists' research there as well. So yeah, I just thought it was just a really interesting bit of science communication and also asexual history for me. So that's kind of the sort of reasons why I think it's really important, is to think about that. And I think about this quote that was shared with me. So I had like an anonymous even Google form where I allowed people who are asexual and studying or working in STEM to share their experiences with me or their thoughts with me. And this one was shared with me. And they said, I do human science, neuroscience research. I'm a big supporter of nothing about us without us. The idea that if you're researching a specific population and you're not part of that group, you should be consulting with that group to get their feedback on your study. And so we have, plenty of examples of asexual people doing research like Yasmin is, but also when they are involving asexual people in the research, but also where we may be even lacking asexual people in research as well. And how do we make sure we include them as part of that as well? So this is one of the reasons why I think it's so important to raise the visibility of asexuality in science, in STEM. But just to show you another side of things, this is another quote that was shared with me. And it is, I believe the most common question I get when I am asked about being ace is generally something like, oh, so you're like Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory? Yeah, I heard this. It's not something I've ever experienced myself. Some of you in the audience may have said this being said to you, but I know a few people who've been told this. And my frustration is, well, one, there's a lack of media representation here. And there's a general lack of media representation of queer scientists in general, not just ace scientists. But even if Sheldon was canonically ace, because he's read as ace, but he's not canonically ace, even if he was, it doesn't really show the experiences of what it's like to be asexual working in different areas of STEM. That's the thing I find particularly frustrating about it. The other thing I also found through the Google form I mentioned is somebody said, I've noticed an interesting trend that some people in STEM fields think they're being accepting by loving ace-coded characters in science fiction shows, but these characters are almost always aliens or robots, and this association can be incredibly dehumanizing. So that was another thing that was shared with me, which I also thought was quite interesting. But yeah, basically we just have this lack of representation and lack of actually what does it look like. And there are a couple of different publications I've come across which do share the experiences, and some of them have referenced some of the issues we find in the community in general. But one of the things I wanted to do, so in 2021, for the very first International Asexuality Day, was share different profiles of different aces in STEM. We also did this in 2022. We allowed people to anonymously share the information, so they could have like a different picture, be labeled anonymous or a different name to protect their identity, but to show that there is a range of different people across the world doing things. So this was also on an international context as well. So that's kind of one of the things I did. And it's something I'm trying to think about whether I want to continue doing that kind of work in 2025. But there's loads of us out there. I think there can be this feeling of there's only just me in the lab, and that's some of the experiences that have been shared with me. Oh, it's just me, or I may know one other person, or the fact that it's just me and I can't be out. The reality is there's a lot of us out there, so many out there, more than you think. And so that's one of the ways in which, and I'm seeing some in the comments that there are a few people there. See, there's loads of us out there, so many of us in STEM, and so many different things that we're doing out there. But as a science communicator, I also wanted to sort of use my experiences. And one of the things I do is science shows where I do different science demos, and using TikTok as a platform to reach the ACE community with science. And that's one of the things I did much earlier on as well. So here's a couple of demos I did. So one on the left is making a density column. So you put like food dye in different concentrations of sugar and water to make a flag. And then I have a demo using the ACE ring and a card there as well to do with inertia. So yeah, those are the kind of the ways of which I've kind of done this before. And I've done like things like storytelling and even a demo to do with the split attraction model as well, which I actually entered into a science demo competition. So that's some of the stuff I'd done previously. But then in 2024, I had this amazing opportunity by speaking to, I happened to be speaking at an event at the Francis Crick Institute in London. It was for LGBT plus History Month. We were talking about healthcare. And one of the speakers was the chief editor of Nature Reviews Urology. And she said, do you fancy writing something for us? And I went, yeah, that sounds amazing. And so a few months later, we had this paper published, which was, it's 1,300 word article. And I co-authored it with Stella Steckenberger, who I'd really recommend looking up her work. She brought so much expertise to this article, which I'm incredibly grateful for. She also does have an Instagram account, and she does quite a bit around so LGBTQ plus inclusion in medicine. And she's published a couple papers looking at asexual inclusion in particular, which is referenced in this paper. But this was an amazing opportunity I never expected to be able to do. And I left a PhD in 2012. I thought I left academia behind, and here I am publishing something in Nature. And it was just, it's a great thing to be able to talk about, but also for people to find, you know, urologists will be reading this, which is absolutely incredible. The last thing I just wanted to share, and I think this was referenced earlier in the comments, but one of the other things, another story that was sort of shared with me was this one. I'm in speech language pathology, a field full of cis white women. I'm already a minority racially, so I know that being asexual would further cast me out, especially within a small BIPOC community. It's just a reminder that when we do other forms of inclusion, and also this is within STEM, it is also asexual inclusion there as well, but also to think about this within our own communities. And just a reminder to remember that there are going to be different experiences of different ACEs when we look through the lens of intersectionality, and that the fact we need to be doing this within STEM as well. So yeah, and the fact that when you have STEM, which already can be a not an ethnically diverse place, depending which field you're in, that also has an impact on the ACEs within those fields there as well, for example. So that's kind of the work in STEM. If I jump across to my work in education, in May this year, they opened up a consultation on new guidance on relationships and sex education and health education. So what something we call RHSE in the UK. Say I do work within particularly UK context. This is a consultation opened in May under the Conservative government, and then it closed after we got a new government in, which is quite interesting. So the election happened the week before the consultation closed. So I actually have no idea what's going to happen to this consultation. I don't really know how they were going to respond to it. But basically, even the board did respond to it, so the guidance that was there. And just to give you like a summary of some of the things we mentioned in our submission, so anybody could submit, whether that's an organization or individual. There's no mention of asexuality and aromanticism. So there is an LGBT section, but no mention of asexuality and aromanticism, which, to be honest, does not surprise me. And it's not been referenced in previous guidance as well. There's also restrictions around discussing gender identity. If anybody's familiar with the consultation early this year, the phrasing of the title was around supporting gender questioning children. It's basically just not inclusive of trans young people. It actually can potentially be quite harmful for trans young people as well. And some of this stuff that you saw from that consultation, you were seeing in this consultation as well. So that was very concerning for us. And it reminded us of Section 28, which was brought in the 1980s, which banned the promotion of homosexuality. So stopped just talking about anything LGBT related. And we're seeing the same sort of thing happening, but for trans youth instead. So that was a worry for us. There's also a lack of addressing ace phobia, and actually how do you do that in schools, and also a lack of guidance how to effectively support ace students and staff. So this is things that was in our submission, and we'll just wait to see if there will be a change to the guidance, if there will be a response to this consultation, because it was under a previous government. It could be something that could be shelved or something that could be picked up. We're just going to have to wait and see what's going to happen. But in the meantime, if you did want any resources around understanding the experiences within education, you have the National LGBT Survey, which I reference, and there's a lot of really good stuff in there. It's in the UK report, have to talk about that. Some really fun. So Yasmin not only talks about healthcare or looked at healthcare in this report, she also did look at education, which has been incredibly useful for me to reference. The Trevor Project also did some research on asexual use, and there's also the Ace Inclusion Guide for High Schools, which is by Asexual Outreach. Although it was written in a North American context, I found it really useful as somebody based in the UK. So but it's really, really important for us to do this. I think I'm speaking to the converted here about how important it is. And I think about how in my 20s, I just thought that something was wrong with me because I didn't realize, I didn't know anything about asexuality, didn't know the existence of it. And that lack of information made me feel like that something was wrong with me, basically, to the point I almost considered going to a doctor to see if I could do something about it, and I'm glad I never did. So it's so important for me to raise that visibility of asexuality with young people in education. And linked to this, the couple of things I just want to finish on is the fact that with LGBT plus History Month, which is what we celebrate in February in the UK, I know that in the US they celebrate it in October, and there's also other international LGBT plus History Months as well that might celebrate at different times. The theme for next year is activism and social change. And this little badge, which I actually have right in front of me here, this is also badge design. So I should say I work for the organization Schools Out, who founded LGBT plus History Month and run it. This badge design was done by a young person through our badge competition. The theme is activism, social change, and activism is always needed. It's always important, but I feel like we're in a time where it feels even more important than ever, especially when we look at, for example, the erosion of trans rights in the UK and how scary things look, basically. And I guess the thing I wanted to share with you, something I think about as an activist, is the fact that sometimes when I go and give talks as well, and sometimes you feel like, oh, is it just me? Is it just, how much impact am I making here? Will this make impact, this thing I'm going to be going and doing? And it's something I think about sometimes when I go home. But what we probably see just through the session is that there's so many of us working on this, and I've been really fortunate to know the work across different LGBTQ plus charities in the UK. So many individuals doing really fantastic work, and it's just that reminder that we're all doing this as a collective. And so even the things that you might feel as a really, really, really small thing, or maybe it's just a little social group that you feel like, oh, is this going to make a difference? It's all collectively making a difference. And so I just want to really emphasize that the importance of, doing the small things does really matter. And it doesn't always have to be about really big things. We're doing this as a collective. And it's just something I think about, really. And so, at times when we feel like things are going to be hard to change, that's just something I think about. And the final thing I also want to say is perfect is the enemy of good. Sometimes I worry about trying to do the right thing. And the thing is, if we strive for perfectionism, sometimes that can stop us from doing the work, if that makes sense. So I realize we've gone a bit over time. Apologies for that. But I just wanted to leave you with those two things, that the small things do matter, and worrying about being perfect can stop you from doing things in the first place. If you do want to get in touch with me to join a Discord server, this is my website. There's a little form on there if you want to get in touch. And here are my socials. Thank you. I hope this was interesting. Thank you for letting me ramble on about my work. I'm looking forward to hearing your questions.
Yasmin, I think you're muted.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. I was just wondering if there are any questions over on YouTube, or should I just ask my own?
Up to you.
Are there any?
I'm not seeing any quite yet. I'm sorry if I missed one. Please feel free to repost it. But Yasmin, fire away.
Yeah, well, that's been great to hear about all the things that you've been working on this year. And it also feels very ironic because I know that you've said that you still you're not entirely sure about referring to yourself like as an activist. And yet you've been doing all this very specific activism across all these different areas.
I know.
Oh,
I
one
know.
person actually wanted to know what's your TikTok, Sarah.
I realized I don't have it on the screen, but basically it's ace.psychom, which is the same as my Instagram. Why don't I have it on it? I don't know. But yeah, it's ace.psychom. And I don't post on it as very much anymore, but if you go down the page, you'll see the science specific things. So I did videos, I think in 2021, 2022, and 2023. This year, also, that's another thing. Just this year, I just wasn't feeling up to it, and that's okay. You know, it's like sometimes there'll be times where you have more capacity and stuff to do things, and sometimes you don't. And this year, it was just one of those years where I just did something a bit more low key. Yeah, but yeah, it is something we talked about before. I'm like, is this because I use advocacy because I'm like, I know I'm doing advocacy, but is this activism? And that doesn't matter, is the other thing. Doesn't matter what we call it.
But it looks like you've really kind of found like the specific areas that you want to do. So do you have any tips for people watching who are looking to get involved in activism or advocacy?
I think what you were saying earlier about the importance of, like you were saying about doing like the more in-person things, I think there's so much in community work, which is really important, and support and signposting of resources. It's really, really important. But we really also need to get outside of communities and go into the spaces and the spaces that we're familiar with. I will say that I do come from a position where it's safe for me to be open about my identity, and you know, and has also been incredibly useful for my work. The kind of internal work I've done for myself is really impacted my work in science communication education positively outside the asexual stuff that I do. So yeah, but if you are able to be open and visible, if you can, just like you use that kind of knowledge you already got, or it's little things like, oh, if you're really good at marketing, use those marketing skills. It's trying to like utilize the spaces and then your knowledge of spaces and talking about it and utilizing it. Really, I think it's really important. And yeah, for science, I think it's so incredibly important. In medicine, it's so incredibly important. And something I found from speaking to teachers, I went to a Leeds meeting for the people who do things around sex education in schools. Some of them are doing asexuality work and some of them aren't. And they were like, I've never heard of this anymore before. I'm so glad. And just because I talked about it in a, you know, in a space that I was familiar with, that made a difference, you know. So that's some of the things I think about. And I also I've been really, really fortunate with ACEs and STEM that they've given me a space to ask questions or say, hey, what do you think? Or actually, could you share your experiences with me that I could share in my talks? Be able to speak to specific communities like that's so important. I think I did see a comment up here somewhere. Where is it? This makes me think how often ACEs in academia are forgotten and erased, while often academics who are not ACE-spect are most often recognized. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that in academia, I will say from experience of science, you know, different fields are different. But it's just a thing I noticed in one of the reports I was reading. It's just the asexuality is very invisible, and when we talk about LGBTQ plus inclusion, it's not always included as well. So yeah, so I think just talking about it has meant that people, you know, they're open to thinking about it. It's just making somebody more aware was like the key thing. So yeah, so certain things I would think about, but I will say I'm still learning, very much still learning about how to do this. And yeah.
Well, for somebody still learning, you've done a really good job, and it's great. I'm really glad that you're able to share all of these things with the audience.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
In terms of timings, do we have to move on to the next part, or?
Yeah, I was just seeing if there's any. It sounds like you've pretty much covered it all, Sarah. Since I'm not seeing any more questions. But yeah, thank you. It was a very another very inspirational sort of body of work there.
Thank you.
We're gonna. Yes, I think Yasmin's right in terms of timing. We will move on. Sarah, do you want to stay in the background, or do you want to go backstage? We're going to bring on. Our next two amazing guests, Dr. Pragati Singh and David J. So, do you want to stick around?
I could pop off stage and then be brought on later, maybe.
Yeah,
does that sound good?
Sure. If you want to pop back on, just say something in the chat. So here we go. Here's our first amazing guest, Dr. Pragati Singh, and here is David J. So hi both.
Hello.
Hi. It's so great to see you, Yasmin and Pragati.
Good to see you all, actually. It's been a while.
Yes. So we all had a good festive season.
Totally.
Should we start off with Pragati? So Pragati, what would you like to share with us?
I can share some updates. I feel like 2024 has been quite big for me and Indonesians because we started doing offline work after a while.
I'm sorry, actually, sorry, my mistake completely. Before I got to that, I should have said, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure.
You might not need an introduction to many people here, but I think it's worth hearing all the stuff you're involved with.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Dr. Pragati, and I am the founder of Indian Aces. That's the primary pioneering initiator working on asexuality in India since 2014. And this year, we did complete our 10 years. That was a huge thing for me personally also, but also for the community, because a lot of people who've supported us over the last 10 years had an opportunity to all come together in one place at one time, and we had about 100 community members and allies together in one place. It was a full day celebration, which we joined with the International Asexuality Day because our birthday falls very close to International Asexuality Day. Our birthday is on the 10th of April. And that was one of our highlights for this year, 100%, because it was also offline after a long time. And then besides that, of course, the other big event that we do is Pan Asia, which is a conference that transcends the borders of India and also includes a lot of other Asian speakers, panelists, performers, because our cultures, of course, there's a lot of complex diversity within Asian cultures, but there's also so many similarities. And all those similarities are typically excluded as a bunch from the typical discourse around asexuality that you get to see on a day-to-day basis. And so Pan Asia is a great space for people to come together and speak about those peculiarities of how our cultures intersect with asexuality in unique ways. So we again got to do that offline in 2024. We had members and speakers from at least 5 countries from across Asia speaking about their own work, advocacy work, and also their lived experiences. So these were like the 2 main highlights for us in India. And of course, besides that, we've also restarted doing a lot of our small little events across the country. We did something in Pune, we did a small meetup in Bangalore. All of those were quite exciting. And something unique that I think I probably did for the first time is I spoke at a very small government school in rural Punjab in India. And that was an invitation that happened completely out of the blue. And I decided to take it up. And I was amazed at how open the students were to listening to something about asexuality. Remember, it's a school where people typically don't even have any sex ed. And still, they were very receptive to understanding about asexuality. And that was a key moment, I think, for me. And then, of course, individually, I've done a bunch of work. I spoke at Goldman Sachs in India. I spoke at EY. I also spoke at Out and Equal, the Asia Pacific Conference. And interestingly, you would assume, and this is something that that has stuck with me. It was a room full of, let's say, 200 leaders doing DEI work in the Asia Pacific region. And I could sense that this question would make sense. So I asked the audience, how many of you all have asexuality explicitly mentioned in any of your communication ever at all? Guess how many people raised their hand? It was one person who is a professional acquaintance of mine from before. So I was not surprised that she has included asexuality in her organization. Nobody else of the 200 people had done that. And I was expecting a low number, but I was not expecting one. So when that happened, it took me by surprise. Fortunately, after the event ended, after the talk, we had a discussion, and 3 of those organizations already included a lot of asexuality vocabulary in their communications and in their policies now. One incredible thing that I got to do was I got to visit the University of Brighton. Of course, I was visiting their Center for Transforming Sexuality and Gender to exchange notes on asexuality and our work on queer studies. But I also got to walk in the London Pride with the Avon banner. I got to meet Mick for the first time after having spoken to you for so long. I know that Yasmin was there, but of course I could not speak to her. But that was, again, an incredible moment for me. So that's pretty much been 2024, apart from other small little things, but it's been incredible for me. Yeah, thank you.
And before others jump in, I'd just like to, you mentioned your Pan Asia. Is this the right website for people want to get involved?
Absolutely. This is the right website.
Sexuality.
And you will, we do Panisha every year around the same time, which is the Asexual Awareness Week. So if you want to get involved in any way or shape or form, please subscribe to the newsletter on this website. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing sharing all that. Any questions or comments for Pragati, please write a comment. While we're waiting for that, Yasmin, would you like to jump in with anything that struck you?
Only that I'm sure that if you were to do the same Out and Equal conference in the US or the one over here, I'm sure the answers would be very much the same. I've definitely noticed an almost universal lack of inclusion in terms of asexuality and policy. So I'm not entirely surprised that it's the same in your neck of the woods as well, but it's great that you've been able to get out there. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to cross paths when you were in the UK. We're like so close and yet so far at London Pride. Even if you're on the same route, we're literally like 3 hours away from each other.
I see. Okay. Next time.
Yeah.
Thanks to the comment from Danny. Yeah, and I'd like to state I sat in on the remotely on the conference that Pragati held. It was very interesting. It is so interesting to hear about ACEs and their experience from different cultures. I definitely felt I learned a lot from that, and I look forward to following online the next one, and maybe one day going in person. You never know. DJ, would you like to jump in with anything, given what we've heard from Pragati?
Sure. And Pragati, Yasmin, so fantastic to hear about your work. I have been less active this year. I have a 7-year-old and a 1-year-old, so I've been much busier parenting. But I have been doing a lot around queer family and ace family. So I've been some of my work has been supporting a number of people who are looking at different ways of building abundant definitions of family. And what I've found is that there's a really strong pushback against a culture of parental isolation. There are a lot of people, queer folks, straight folks, who are thinking about how to build committed relationships with people in their lives who are not necessarily primary legal biological parents. And when I come and I talk about my experience forming a 3-parent family and the ways that draws on ace and aromantic ideas of how to build connection and intimacy, that's been really, really powerful. So there's been some, I think, rich and powerful conversation happening around applying kind of insights from ACE culture to the work of building communities of care around kids, around elders. That is, I've spoken at several conferences about this, the Collective Live and Wisdom Exchange here in the Bay Area. I've partnered with some poly activists, and we've passed laws in Somerville, in Massachusetts, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in my hometown of Oakland, California, and in Berkeley, California, that are around non-discrimination ordinances around relationship and family structure. So that's been this sort of question of how the many, many ways ACEs can build families has been very on my mind. And then additionally this year, I will quickly plug, I released a book called Relationality that further really explores these ideas of what relationships are and how we can support people who do the work of building them. And this is something that, coming out of my years of activism in the ACE community, is really, really has been extremely important to me, has been a motivator. And I have been really reflecting a lot on how being liberated from compulsory sexuality, being liberated to think in a more expansive way about what kind of relationships we need and how we can go about the work of building them, has been, I think, a path to some incredibly powerful, it's been an incredibly powerful journey in my life. And so I've been exploring that here and really looking at how some of these lessons that we take from the ACE community can change how we fund the work of building community. So I've been working with major foundations and other people in the funding landscape around sort of the question of how we see where relationships are forming so that we can fund the work of building them in the midst of a global loneliness crisis and very related crisis of democracy. So that's gets a little bit out of directly ACE activism, but a lot of it has roots in the work that we do here.
Awesome, and I've just acquired my copy, so I will look forward to reading that. And next time we meet in person, you can. I look forward to getting it signed.
I would love that.
So just looking at the comments, does anybody who's watching have any comments either for Pragati or for DJ? Please put them in the chat. I'm getting comments here saying thank you, David J, for sharing that. That's very interesting. Yeah, I'm sure the community will read this of interest. Well, let's give a few more minutes for any other questions to come up. But just those of you here, out of all the things you've heard, is there anybody can answer this? Is there anything you'd like to ask any of the other panelists up here about what you've been talking about?
There's one thing I forgot to mention, if I can throw it in. I've been doing a lot of work on something called Project Recognize. If you put up the website projectrecognize.org, and that is a research project out of Northwestern that is trying to change the way, it's a fairly well-funded research project that's trying to change the way that we write surveys. So it's really looking at publishing best practices for ACE and intersex inclusion in healthcare surveys and government surveys to create a new standard in the US and hopefully beyond the US. And so that has been a lot of fun to working with a really fantastic intersectional team there. Pragati, I'm really curious. You mentioned, and I know we've had some discussion about this before, some of the experiences that feel like they're underrepresented or excluded from mainstream ACE discourse. I'm really curious, what are some of those experiences coming up in your work that you want mainstream ACE discourse to better recognize and make space for?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that incredible question. I can go on and on about that, but I would say that broadly speaking, one of the most important distinctions that I've realized over the last decade is that, in my experience, a lot of the focus for ACE activism in a lot of the Western countries lies around the identity of asexuality, whereas for a lot of people in my community in India or in a lot of other Asian communities, the words, the vocabulary, the identity as such matters lesser than how it manifests for people when it intersects with our culture. So, for example, in India, a lot of people don't necessarily care about asexuality as a word, but what they do care about, when I have to talk about why this work is important, I will talk about how it impacts women, their sense of body autonomy, consent, forced marriages, arranged marriages, the lack of laws around marital rape in our country, right? So those are talking points for cultures like mine. I feel like this is the biggest, broadest distinction that I've been able to draw, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hope we get to dive into that in much more depth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's been just working with International Asexuality Day, just speaking for myself, that's been really rewarding from that point of view to hear about how, some things we just don't think about in other countries, like for myself sitting in the West, it's just different concerns, but overlap, definitely overlap.
100%. Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I started my work with asexuality from the same gaze, right? And then eventually, as I interacted with the community, I learned about what exactly is the pain point and where exactly the focus needs to be instead of where I had started from. And so it's been a learning journey for me as well.
I think that's something that the community in like the UK and other places could probably take a leaf out of your book. I think that sometimes we get a bit too bogged down worrying about semantics and labels and terminology, and you could find many more conversations about different terminologies online than you can find conversations about how we bring about legislative change. Like the conversations are completely different. So I feel like, we could probably take a leaf out of your book and expand it into what different areas of society and how we have that overlap with those outside of the community as well, and kind of bringing all of those causes together.
There's another one here for Pragati. Will Pragati ever come to the US?
Yes, I've been to the US multiple times. I've met in fact, the very first time that I met a bunch of ACE people in the US was in 2017. I was traveling and I was in LA, and this entire bunch of ACE activists from LA, everybody came to meet me. It was so welcoming and so warm. This was back in 2017. So I met a bunch of people in parts of the country in the US, and I've also lived in the US for a year last year, and then I came back just about a year ago. I don't know when I'm coming next, though.
Thank you. That's awesome. Right, so we're running short of time. The next session is starting in 15 minutes, so we should probably be wrapping up. So just before we finish, by any last thoughts, maybe something you're particularly excited about in 2025? It can be something you've already mentioned, but maybe you want to put a new take on it. Before we go round everybody, anybody like to start with your last minute thoughts and looking ahead to 2025?
I just want to speak quickly. Someone mentioned the impact of older people and social isolation. And I'll say one of the things with my book that I've been spending more and more time with social isolation researchers, the Foundation for Social Connection, people who are thinking about the loneliness crisis. And something that's incredible for me is how much more sophisticated the thinking about friendship and intimacy and connection outside of romantic partnership is in the ACE community than it is among people who are talking about loneliness. And it's been incredible to me to realize how much our community and the culture that we've built have to contribute to what I think is a really critical global conversation for everyone. And so this is not to diminish the social isolation use, but to say that I think as ACE people, we, if anything, can bring a skillfulness around navigating loneliness that is needed.
And that also ties back to one of the topics we're working on the front page. One of the intersections we definitely are interested in is older races, and so that we hope to have a good information resource. And so if anybody can contribute to that or proofread what we're doing, then please do get involved with the project, as we've said earlier. Thank you. Any last minute thoughts? Yasmin, Pragati?
I'll just add that I'm very happy to hear about Project Recognize that you mentioned, David, especially because it's focusing on the two identities that I think are always invisible, intersex and asexual people. And I've been trying to do my bit in India when it comes to making intersex communities our allies, because I think we both are underrepresented, at least in my country for sure. And that also brings me to the point that I was thinking about, that in 2025, I'm focusing also a lot more on building allyship within LGBTQI community, but also beyond it. And one of the events that we do is, we're going to do it again offline this year, Humans of Queer. So it involves making a space for people to ask uncomfortable questions to ace people and queer people who are ready to take up that challenge, to kind of bridge that gap. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm very looking forward to seeing the outcome of that. So yeah, do keep us all informed. Yasmin, any last minute thoughts, or has everything already been covered?
Just that it's been really great to hear from both of you about what work you've been working on this year, and it's been great to hear from Sarah as well, and also to see what the future is for the AVEN homepage and the website. So yeah, it's just been really cool to hear from everybody.
Yeah, so thank you, all three of you, Yasmin, David, Pragati, for your contributions here, and thanks also to Nej, Steph, Sarah, for your contributions earlier, and also Matt, you won't be able to see, but has been in the background doing some tech support. Did I miss anybody? Hope I didn't miss anybody. But if I did, thank you to everybody who contributed to putting together this event. We will wrap up now, but just a reminder that the next event is going to be on the Discord. Sorry, just displaying an important comment here about the intersex community. Yes, absolutely. That's a hugely important intersection as well. We definitely want to think more about that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. And the trans and bi communities as well. Yeah. So what we're going to do is, if you haven't already joined the Discord server, then the link is in the description, and it's right here as well. And the next session will be starting in about 10 minutes or so. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.